Hello VC, hope everybody's doing well out there. It's a rainy morning here, so it's a good time to stay in and talk about records and make a video. I actually just started this a minute ago and totally dropped a record on camera, so I'm starting over. It's a bit of a flub there. I was actually just at the record fair this past weekend and had a pretty good haul there. So I'll save that for next time and just kind of wrap up the pre-record fair pickups for this video. And try and keep it on the shorter side. I had some thrift finds. I came to one store and they had a whole bunch of stuff that looked like a record store dumped off, which there is one in the area. But it was mostly like classic country, some Merle Haggard, George Jones, stuff like that. Well, it's pretty nice shape. Some of it was pretty old. So I picked up some of those. I think most of those I'll probably like sell or try and trade or something. But this is one I kept for myself. David Allan Coe. Rocking the nudie suits, they were called. This is a compilation of 10 years of his hits. And he was kind of right there with the outlaw movement of the 70s with Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson. So if you like that kind of style, then this might be for you. He's pretty full-on country. He's a rebel. And I found this one at a different spot. This is the Jacksons from 1976. This is actually their first album after leaving Motown. So it's actually a Philadelphia International production on Epic. So Gamble and Huff, and it's got the MFSB Philly sound, very fully orchestrated. And actually this one, I was looking this one up, it kind of isn't rated that highly, but I enjoyed this quite a bit. It's got Enjoy Yourself, Good Times, Keep on Dancing, so, you know, a bit of a nod to the disco era. And Michael Jackson kind of coming into his own as a singer here. Doesn't sound like a little kid anymore. So, yeah, I quite enjoyed this one, actually. And this one was at a different spot. Tito Puente, that's Cha Cha Cha. Cover is pretty shot, but the vinyl is reasonably okay. It's on RCA Victor, black label. This one is a pretty old one. This is 1950s. This is actually the first one I've ever picked up by him, and it's dope. It's got, as the title says, cha-cha, mambos, bit of vocals on there, so it's not strictly instrumental, but very dope, very Latin. I got the Fireballs, Come On React. This was not a thrift find, this was kind of the cheap bins at a record store. Fireballs, I think their best known song was Bottle of Wine. This is their final album. I think this is like, yeah, 1969 on Atco. And it's got songs by Buffy Sainte-Marie, Alan Toussaint, Felix Cavaliere, Mark Lindsay. Kind of a mix of kind of pop and garage rock on there. Bit of a Monkees influence even. And on to... The next stuff is from my buddy who's a record dealer who sometimes hooks me up with some vintage reggae, so I've got some of that. But I also got from him a couple that were big on my wants list. I got Pentangle Debut. Again, cover not the greatest shape, vinyl's perfect. Liner notes by John Peel on here. And this has got, actually I was really struck with this one, how much of a full band record this is. Obviously you've got Bert Jantz and John Renborn on the guitars, but some very nice bass and drum work as well on here. Excellent record on the Tricolor Reprise, however you say that. I think that about completes my early Pentangle albums. Next I got to get into some Fairport Convention. I just don't seem to see a whole lot of them around my area. At least not the early ones, which I guess is what you're going to want to check. I'm not as familiar with their catalog. Next up, my buddy actually put out a compilation called, what is it called? Love is the Song We Sing, or something like that. And it was a compilation of Motown's Mo West imprint, which they closed up operations in Detroit and moved to LA, kind of in the early 70s. and put out a bunch of releases on the Mo West label. And one of the albums that he sourced some tracks from was this one. And it's Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, Chameleon. And this is on Mo West. This is 1972. And this is a bit of a departure from kind of, if you only know kind of the 60s Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, that kind of New York, street corner, harmony kind of thing. This is more, has a very West Coast feel, kind of Crosby, Stills and Nash, Laurel Canyon, but with a very heavily orchestrated backdrop, a lot of instrumentation, very produced, but a very gorgeous record. Just gorgeously layered and harmonies, and there's one track that has a bit of a nod, or kind of an early nod to disco, I would think, on here. 72, that's pretty early for disco, but it's got a bit of a dancey touch on there. And it's just some beautiful, he took 3 tracks off this album for the compilation, which also included stuff by Cyrita and Odyssey, and that came out on Light in the Attic Records. So it's definitely a compilation to check out. So he actually had 3 copies of this one, so I was happy to score that one. Very rare to see any Mo West records in my area. I think that's only the 2nd one I've ever found. The other one was a big wants list item. So it's Minnie Riperton, solo debut, Come Into My Garden. Again, this is early 70s, I should think. This is old on GRT. She had been one of the featured vocalists in the Rotary Connection, and this is her first solo album, and very much in the Rotary Connection style, just very very layered production, and her gorgeous voice with the notes she can hit, just incredible stuff. I'm sure that's well known in the BC. And on to some reggae finds. I got a 12-inch single from a singer called Barry Brown. He was something of a journeyman singer, but put out quite a few good records. This is on Observers. First side is called Thank You Mama, or Thank You, and second side is called Give Me What Me Want, which not a bad tune. I was afraid I'd kind of picked up a bit of a dud there, but got it home and listened to it, and it was actually a little bit better than I was expecting. That's produced by Niney the Observer. He was called Niney because he had lost a finger in a workplace accident. Very good producer of kind of the late 70s, early 80s. I'm always talking about the Greensleeves label. Here's another one. This is one of these kind of combination albums they would put out. And they kind of didn't have enough tracks from a single artist. They would put them together with another one where somebody would meet somebody else. And this is called Judge Not. It's like mint vinyl, Greensleeves. One side is 3 tracks by Dennis Brown, and the other side is 3 by Gregory Isaacs, which the 2 of them are basically the top 2 reggae singers of all time behind Bob Marley. And either one of them at various points were probably more popular in Jamaica than Bob Marley. So each track on here is extended. They're all about 7 minutes and some seconds, so you get the song and then kind of an extended dubwise mix. And that's produced by Gussie Clarke, Augustus Clarke, we call him. He was a very big producer. He actually produced the first album by Big Youth in the 70s. Then kind of laid low a little bit and came back strong in kind of the last half of the 80s when he started coming out with some big hits from people like Gregory Isaacs. I think he actually might have just passed away pretty recently. And Zap Pow, this is Revolution. This is from 1976 on Trojan Original. Zap Pow was a full band, kind of unusual in reggae. Not too many of them. They would tend to rely more on kind of a floating pool of studio musicians, as I've said before, which is what some of these guys are. But they got together and did their own thing as well. This includes guitarist Dwight Pickney, who was later in the Roots Radics, which was the crack band of the early to mid 80s, and David Madden on sax, and the lead vocals is Beres Hammond, who later went solo in the 80s and became quite a big star in the 90s as a solo performer, with more of a lovers rock kind of style. And this album kind of mixes up reggae with a bit of funk and some instrumentals and some vocals. Very nice set. A couple of their songs not on this album were actually sampled pretty heavily. And I got this one. This is an LP. It has no sleeve, but it is by an artist called Winston Jarrett. It's not really credited on there. And this is an album called Wise Man from 1979. I think it's only like his second or third album. This is produced by Roy Cousins, who is a pretty well-known guy. He sang in a group called the Royals and later moved into production of other artists. This is on his own 1BC label. Winston Jarrett, very good roots singer. He sang with a group called the Righteous Flames. I believe he is now living in Seattle, the last I heard. It's a very good album there, very rootsy. And last couple of ones here. I have one by Dennis Al Capone. This is again, this is distributed by Trojan, but it's actually on Attack. This is from early 70s, I think. Dennis Al Capone. This album's called Belch It Off. It's a terrible title. My buddy actually had this for a while, and I was kind of eyeing it. Couldn't really do it, but this time I picked it up. And it's actually a pretty good album. He is one of the early school of DJs. I've talked a bit about the DJs before. They were Jamaican version of rappers. He was kind of, like I said, one of the early ones, inspired by U-Roy. Now, there had been DJs before U-Roy. There were guys like King Stitt, Count Machuki, that would come and kind of talk over records and interject their own bits of jive talk that they picked up from the American R&B radio jocks, and their own kind of vocal interjections, what they call peps, just to add their own kind of style and create a bit of excitement over the record. It was usually a live phenomenon. They would come on stage in the dance halls and talk over the records and get the crowd really hyped up. It was something new, and U-Roy came along and really brought it to a next level. He kind of developed his style a bit more, added more lyrics. He had a great sense of timing, of when to let a bit of the song play, and then when to come in with his own vocal interjections. Sometimes he would kind of interact with the lyrics of the song as he's talking over it and kind of add his own commentary. So the last one up I have by is U-Roy. This is called With Words of Wisdom. This is Treasure Isle Productions. This is a later reissue which came out in the 70s on Virgin's Frontline imprint. This kind of collects the rest of his hits for Treasure Isle. He had gone to the Treasure Isle label, kind of as he'd put out a couple of records, and got together with Duke Reed, the producer and owner of the Treasure Isle label, and they got together and he recorded a bunch of stuff, 2 LPs worth. There's one called Version Galore, which I already have. I was showing that in an earlier video, I think. And that I have that on a Treasure Isle pressing and also on the Virgin edition. And this is kind of the second volume of this. When he got together with Treasure Isle, he took the DJing thing to a whole new level and started to develop it more further on record. At one time, when he hit big, he had 3 songs in the top 3 songs in the Jamaican charts at the same time for like 6 weeks running. And 2 of those songs are included on this album. The other one is on Version Galore. And the ones on here are Rule the Nation and Wake the Town, which both have 2 of the most sampled openings of reggae songs ever. They just keep getting done over and over and over again in samples. So U-Roy is still around today, still doing his thing. Dennis Al Capone still active too. 2 top DJs of the kind of the first generation, and pretty much everybody that that came after that kind of followed in U-Roy's style for a long time. So that's about what I've got for you today, guys. I'll put some sound clips in the comments below as usual, so you can check some of this stuff out if you're so inclined to do so. And next time I will show my record fair haul, which I've got some tasty stuff in there. So take it easy, guys. BC seems a little quietish lately. I guess people are kind of getting back to school, getting back to work, whatever. But some good new members coming up. Christian, good to see your videos. Rado31, I think your name is. New Zealand Massive. Good stuff coming out there. As always, Cut Tooth, Marcel, you're doing some good stuff. And cheers, guys. I will talk to you soon. Peace.